Well, here's the old Greenberg Blue Book that we all reference pretty much, and here's the little trick over here. Special ratio rocker arms and large base circle cams often create the follower oil grooves to be out of time with the oil holes in the case and do not oil the valve train components when they are supposed to. Cut a thin line, 0.20 of an inch wide and deep, from oil groove to oil groove. When you're building an engine, if you're just doing a rebuild with stock parts, you don't have to worry about most of this. But if you are making some changes to an engine, and if you're going a little bit to the extreme, which I am not, but I want you to explain to you a little bit about some options that you have and some things you have to watch for. So here's a Engel W100 cam, which is a very mild cam, and I've showed you the difference in my other cam, the height of the peak and the amount of the nose right here, as we'll call it, the round nose of the peak. It's a little bit softer than even this one here, and you might ask yourself, you know, I've heard this all my life, and you may have as well, a reground cam or a competition cam, and they talk about the lift and the duration. So half an inch should be 500, a quarter of an inch should be 250, and just clarification on that in case you were sleeping in math class. But so there's a limit to how high you can go on these camshafts, and one of the ways that how do you make it lift higher? Well, you can add metal to the nose of it, and they've done that, but at some point you're gonna reach a limit. Here's the lifter. You can see it coming up here, and I've got it pretty much on the nose of the cam. There's not that much further to go. Now this cam had an advertised lift of 420 thousandths, and this new cam I've got has a advertised lift of half an inch, 500 thousandths, if you use a 1.5 ratio rocker. So that should be a clue. Ratio. That means they change the pivot point on the rocker shaft. If it's like a teeter-totter, if you're pushing on one side and the pivot point is in the middle, then it's going to be the same when you lift up on this side as going down on the other side. A 1-to-1, 1.25, 1 point everything, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. American cars have used 1.7 in a lot of cars, and that's how there's a limit to how fast you can shove something up and down too. The weight of the material, the weight of the push rods. Somebody asked me some questions about the push rods that I was using. Those were the cheapest chromoly push rods that I found. They were 65 bucks. That's the only reason why I'm going with them, because this is kind of an experiment. I'm not sure which ratio rocker I'm going to have to go with, and I'm not sure what geometry I'm going to have to go with, and that push rod's going to have to be cut to length, and until I decide which setup I'm eventually going to go with, I don't want to spend a lot of money on fancy push rods, and we'll talk more about that in another video. Over there on the bench, I was cutting grooves in this lifter, and kind of you can see there's several of them. I'm practicing. My old eyes, I wish my grandson was here. There's a good one. These are the oil grooves. Now, you've got the discharge side of the oil pump on this going into this half of the case, and there's a main oil galley that goes down underneath the lifters, inside the lifters here. And so what's happening is every time, make up my mind here whether I want this thing in or out. Every time this thing goes up and down, that oil hole lines up with the oil galley, and it allows pressure at just a moment, you know, as it goes up and down. This other line here is also a trap for oil, and that's what's lubricating this lifter, because the lifter is going up and down inside this soft case, and this is a steel lifter. So you're getting lubrication to the lifter, allowing it to go up the push rod, because you'll see the other end of that hole is inside the bottom of the cup here. So the oil is going from the galley, it's going into this hole, coming out this hole, and going up the push rod to the rocker shaft and lubricating that stuff up there. Now, if you get a really radical camshaft with a large base circle and you get all this stuff, race stuff in there, you mess up the timing. And so what happens is at the point where you need to get this, it's not in the right spot at the right time. So that is why Gene Berg came up, and he explains that in the Blue Book. He came up with putting this little line between the grooves. I'll show you guys something else that I found on this case that was a little alarming to me. And I was making a video and I never posted it. And here was the front bearing that went right here by the time gear. So here's the pin that would line it up right here. And that's the pin that goes over here like so. And if you'll recall, we had some unusual wear on the connecting rods. The rods had some unusual wear, and I took this thing to the car wash and I washed it off, and I brought it home and I started taking the case apart, and I saw this little washer here. This is the little flat washer, a spring washer that goes on all the 8mm studs, and it was right on there, and I didn't think about it. And then later on I was editing a video and I thought, there's an unusual reflection, and I don't know if you guys see it on here or not. Ah, there it is right there. Look at this half of this space on this bearing. See how that's got a wear pattern on it? It's like either this was line bored, this is a first over case, so either it was line bored incorrectly, or somebody may have, during their assembly, accidentally dropped that washer on there. Maybe they found it on the floor, didn't want to lose it, didn't notice it when they put the case halves together. And comparing this side to this side, you can see where it's a little bit blacker. Maybe this whole edge of the case had that aviation sealer in between here to seal the case halves. I don't remember an oil leak there, but I'm starting to think that this thing had some issues because of that. So it's kind of interesting to me to do a little Sherlock Holmes investigation and to be aware of some of this stuff. And we're going to definitely be very careful of that when we reassemble it. But these are some of the things that can happen. There is some life left to this this cam, possibly, but I'm going to change it. So I hope that sheds a little bit more light on competition cams versus a stock cam, lifters, how you can improve the oiling, and with the mild cam that I'm using, FK7, there I said it, it probably would not be necessary, but it's free. It's something that you can do. I'm waiting on parts. I'm passing the time. I'm probably going to full flow this case, at least put some threads over here while I've got it apart, so that in the future, if I want to run a standard pump with external filter, I can. But my background is different than some folks. I come from the off-road and sand environment, and now I'm going to start a series of sand videos and just tell some of my stories that of things that happened to me on the sand. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subbing. TheEZGZ out. Stay tuned for some sand stories.